Hi, and welcome to The Leader's Edge, our weekly live interview show where Georgia Donaldson and I,
Good morning.
Emily Chua, we feature successful CEOs and professionals who are so kind to share their stories with us. We want to bring you awareness, inspiration, and leadership tips for you to action so that you'll sharpen your competitive advantage and make a positive impact in your organization and community. Remember, if you are watching us live, you can leave a comment on LinkedIn for us to address on the show. And if you're watching the replay, how about if you comment replay so we'll know that you stopped by? Today, we are speaking with Eva Mitchell, who is the CEO at the Stock Exchange. And she wants to share her desire for us to understand the language of money. So,
Yeah.
as usual, Georgia will introduce Eva properly in a second. And before you do that, we want to invite you to check in. So, we know, I think we all know, that our well being isn't fully complete if we do not have financial well being as part of that. I know we don't normally think necessarily financial well being, but I think it's a term that we should learn to think about. And we also know that a sizable number of us, our eyes literally glaze over when we talk about money, when people are talking about money, and we don't really understand quite how money works, but we might feel a little maybe embarrassed to say that or to acknowledge that. So before we dive into this talk, I'd like you to answer two questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is high, give yourself a rating on how confident you are about how you are managing your money right now. And also on a scale of 1 to 10, how knowledgeable do you feel you are about money and what you can do to grow yours? So, Georgia, let's begin.
All right, great. Emily started us off wonderfully on this Monday morning. Is it raining still in your area, ladies? Or it stopped? We had that lovely rain yesterday that pulled us in to this morning. Not
Not
here again?
raining. Mm-mm.
Okay, all right, not raining. So there
Not
is not going to be any rain today when we're during this talk. It's going to be sunshine because we have sunshine with us, Eva Mitchell herself. Yes, Eva brings light and joy to our conversation this morning. And for those of you who have known Eva over many years, you know that she's an experienced financial manager. You'll also know that she's experienced in risk. You'll also know that she's an experienced corporate finance person, and she is the CEO of the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange. And Eva, I know at least two languages she speaks. She speaks English and she speaks money.
funny.
Eva, is there any other language you speak? You'll tell
Love
us.
language. Love language.
Fluent in English and she's fluent in money. And she's going to spend a few minutes now to tell us about this passion. Eva, during your journey, you've gained this passion about financial well being. Where did that come from? And why is it important?
Hi, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be on your show, Emily and Georgia. Really, really happy to be here.
Thank
So,
you.
how did this journey start for me? And I mean, honestly, this journey did not start for me. Well, at least it didn't mean that I would have ended up in the financial industry. I basically was trained and molded by a very influential person in my life, my mom.
Mhm,
May she rest in peace.
mhm,
She was one of those, like those housewives who did not accept that she would just be a housewife. She wanted to be her own little entrepreneur and be her own architect of her financial career or financial path,
mhm.
right? So I think thankfully I got that level of guidance and coaching and experience from her.
Yeah.
If I were to go back, I remember days where she would plant her own garden seasonings,
Mhm.
and then she started selling it. Eventually, she we ended up in the central market selling it, and
Uh-huh.
I was basically her little accountant. Um,
Wow.
Yes.
and in those days, I remember coming home from school on a Friday night and, helping her bundle it and package it together and
Mhm.
being very excited about note taking and bookkeeping and being very excited about my little solar calculator. that would help along the way, right? Remember those solar calculators
Yes. No, no, no. Emily and I don't remember those.
I,
in the
you're right.
diaries? Yeah, so and being able to just do proper bookkeeping for her and
Mm-hmm.
give her something that she could rely on and build on, more and more and more, something very sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
That's like I took that role very seriously, and I think that really was the foundation and the building block for where I am today. I
Wow.
don't think necessarily I didn't think at that point in time that I would be in finance.
Mm-hmm.
What I thought was, uh, I need to recognize and prioritize the things that are important, and
Mm-hmm.
more importantly, ensuring that I build and I'm prepared for tomorrow.
Right.
So we would say, okay, this is how much we made tonight. This is what we're going to set aside for
Mm-hmm.
more inventory, and this is what we're going to set aside for savings. And that was the highlight of it for me.
That was such a foundation that built a solid foundation for you.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly,
and then
exactly.
you move and then you move into it formally. And now
Yes.
you are the CEO of the stock exchange.
And then I ended up being the CEO of the stock exchange. Yes.
And I'm
Yes.
sure there were many steps in between. But Eva,
Mm-hmm.
so the language of money, why is it so important for leaders, especially?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it's important for everyone, but what would you say? How would you start to couch that so that people get that sense of language? Why
Mm-hmm.
language?
Because I think it's just like any basic language, right? You don't want to be, I mean, for lack of a better word, illiterate. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to your speaking and communicating, right? And
Mhm.
it's just a matter of putting that level of importance, just as you are putting on communication, being able to articulate yourself clearly, being
Mm-hmm.
able to say, this is what I want and this is what I need. And that importance is exactly what you need to put in the language of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, and with respect to the language of money, I think the more and more we know and we learn and we teach ourselves about basic terms like
Mm-hmm.
what is the difference between savings and investment,
Mm-hmm.
what is a contingency plan, what is a really something that contingency plan, meaning you just put something under the pillow, under the mattress tomorrow, how much is that contingency plan supposed to look like, setting goals for yourself with respect to financial objectives, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding the pathway to get there, right? I also believe, apart from just being financially literate with respect to the language of money, I think there's a psychology that comes with it that we must be aware of,
Yes.
and that, I think awareness is super 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 important. And I think, once we acknowledge and we are aware of what money means to us and what
Mm-hmm.
savings and investments, or just wealth means to us, then we are able to determine, okay, what steps do I need to take to get to the point where I feel like I'm financially comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So, and that happens at every layer, of class, or every layer or category of earnings that where you lie. So, for example, um, you may think, okay, I don't make a lot of money, I don't have enough to save.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to begin to save because I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck. But the truth is, and I mean, I'm not saying that don't exist, but I've seen, at least in my career, that there's always opportunities for you to save, and for you to not buy that shiny thing, for you to
Mm-hmm.
not buy that 60-inch TV. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? There's always opportunity for you to put aside something and still have that level of gratification, or that level of relevance, where you say to yourself, you know what, I work hard, I deserve these things. So
Yes.
that's truly important, right? But
Yes.
what happens is we try to give ourselves that satisfaction and that gratification by buying these things that we don't necessarily need,
Yeah.
but because we have this view and this perspective that being financially independent and being creating wealth is something that such as a elusive goal for us.
Mm-hmm.
We settle for
We might
short.
as well.
Yeah, we should
We might
settle.
as well just spending money it because we're
Correct.
not gonna get there anyway. So
Yeah, you're not going to get there. So you know what? Let me just enjoy it when I can and how I
Mm-hmm.
can.
yeah,
But then you never give yourself an opportunity to recognize or realize the comfort that you feel when you have that cushion, when you
Yes.
feel financially
yeah,
comfortable, when you feel like, oh my God, something could happen tomorrow, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay. I will
Right.
be okay because I have that contingency in place.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a feeling where it brings a lot of peace and peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that everybody can achieve. You just need to determine your pathway, and like I said, you need to just understand what you need to do to get there.
Right. Even, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of the generations. And I'm thinking of the older generations, maybe the boomers coming, and then the younger generations. And some of the older ones may say, wow, it's too late now for me to plan, for life's transitions and retirement. And the younger ones may say, it's too early for me to start. What would
No,
you say to those two?
well, I mean, savings can happen at any point in your life, right? Being
Mhm.
financially independent and creating wealth for yourself can happen at any point in your life, right? I think as you're older, you get to understand. You'll have this sense of feeling, listen, I've lived my life, now it's time to spend my money, right?
Yes.
But think about the generation that you're leaving behind, and what do you want to leave for that generation, right? And I mean, me, if I think about myself, I mean, yes, I want my kids to be financially dependent, but sorry, financially independent, but I also want them to have a starter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I want them to have a starter and build from there, have a nice foundation and build from there. So I think even if you feel that you've gotten to the point where being financially literate and creating wealth for yourself, that time has passed. Think about the generation that comes after you and
Mm-hmm.
how you would want to at least set them on a good footing, for
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Um, for the younger ones, I think it's never too early to start. The
Right.
longer your time horizon, actually, the better for you to create more value for yourself. So I
Yes.
would say start early, right? You don't want to shorten your horizon and then you start at the back end of it, and then
Yes.
you don't truly really enjoy it, right?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So you wanna start early and start very small. I always say to people, when they ask me about investing in stock market, right? I always say, listen, um, the stock market investment is something that you have to build a sort of what you may call it. You have to build a level of, like, you can't be impulsive,
Right. Okay.
right? You
Mm-hmm.
have to have a level of control because
Yes.
stock prices move up and down, and you don't
Volatility in the
want to
market.
act.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you don't want to act emotional. You don't want to be an emotional investor.
Right.
So I always tell people, you know what, go start savings via mutual fund,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't experience that type of volatility, and then gradually move to what is called a floating NAV fund,
Mm-hmm.
where prices move up and down, but they're not as volatile as
Mm-hmm.
stocks. And then when you develop that pattern of volatility and being able to handle and manage that volatility, then
Mm-hmm.
you can move into like individual stocks, right? So if you want to build a portfolio, you build a diversified portfolio. I would also say, speak to a licensed broker and get the guidance from that broker where that is concerned, right?
Okay.
But going back to, I wanted to add another thing, Georgia, to the question. I'm
Sure.
reading some statistics, some local statistics that,
Mm-hmm.
we at the stock exchange, we're trying to improve.
Mm-hmm.
So when we look at our local population, 25% of our local population is actually unbanked, meaning
Right.
they don't have any bank account,
Count. Mm-hmm.
no
at
savings
all.
account,
Mm-hmm.
nothing,
Twenty-five
nothing.
So
percent.
money in the
25%.
mattress, money in the mattress, money home, money in the
Or in
Yes.
drawer
the hands
somewhere.
of right? And a large percentage of that is women.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I think, women believe that there are too much frictions in the financial industry and within that space, that I think court sort of creates a perception that it's a daunting process and it's something that
Mm-hmm.
they can never qualify for, or this is something that it will just become too much of a headache. And you know
Okay.
what? Let me look at another non-conventional way to invest. So
Mm-hmm.
you turn to like susus and
So,
stuff like
I was
that.
just going to mention
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And the thing about it is, I mean, I've seen several people coming up in the banking industry where they participate in susus. I mean, my mother used to participate in a susu,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that, worked for her. But there are times where payment was late, or you didn't
Mm-hmm.
get payment at all,
Yes.
or somebody in the susu died, so that's money lost. There's so much
Mm-hmm.
risk, and I don't think she understood the risk as she
Mm-hmm.
was going into it. It was something that just passed on from from the generation of before her, that
Right.
that was a strategy in place that worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, we are now entering this digital world. I shouldn't say we are now entering, but we're into,
yeah.
let's
We're in
call it, digital world where things are so much, where things are so easy, in terms of how you can access financial services,
Right.
your credit score, building your credit score, how to use a credit card, and just being able to access a credit card. I would say it's easier than was 10, 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the banks are so competitive now, right? Of course, you have to go through your KYC. Yeah? That's something that they
Yes,
don't,
of course. Of
Yes,
course.
know your customer.
there's no exceptions. You have to know your customer, right? But
Yes.
if but just getting somebody to speak to you more intelligently about financial services,
Right.
and
Mhm.
somebody who's actually willing to do that, I think it's more accessible now. And I also think that us women in the financial industry, we can be role models. We can be, how can I put it, we can be those figures that encourage other women to
Right.
become financially literate, become financially independent, and take that step into just accessing these services that not only builds wealth, but also takes you out of that comfort zone,
Mhm.
which you think is actually comfortable, but it's really a zone that's full of immense risk, with
Vulnerable.
no
Yes.
recourse with no
Mm-hmm.
recourse available,
Right.
you know
Well, let me tell you something, Eva and Emily. I thought I knew a few languages. I know English and I know patois. I now need fluency in money. I need my language in money. And I'm sure many other persons who are listening to us feel the same way. So, Emily, over to you to wrap. Eva, I see part two coming on.
ah,
Yes. So I mean, Eva, you mentioned, taking the take women taking a leadership role in helping people understand money, and I think that's why I was so passionate today about having us talk about money when
Mm-hmm.
and well-being related to money. And you mentioned it very clearly when you said that the well-being, the peace of mind you feel when you know you have put aside something, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
that if there's an emergency, if something happens, there's some money set aside that you can rely on.
Mm-hmm.
The
yes,
psychology of money, I think, is what also, because there's a lot of fear, right, that people have. Money is the root of all evil, all sorts of things.
yeah,
Fear of the digital landscape when it comes to money too.
yeah,
And the banks can be a little intimidating. They want so much information. Oh my God, I don't have all of that. Da, da, da,
yeah,
da.
yeah, yeah, no,
So, it just can be an intimidating process if you haven't really been in it. And I think too, in the sector, sometimes we use terms that is, we know, and people don't understand, and we don't recognize they don't understand. And as I said before, people may not feel comfortable to say, wait, I don't understand what you just said, could you just repeat?
yeah,
Us being patient enough to like say, okay, this is what we meant by this kind of account or that kind of account or this or that, to
Mhm.
break it down in simple terms so some people feel comfortable. So
Mhm.
thank you for taking the time, Eva. I want people to think of your call to action. You could go back to the initial questions. How do you feel about your money situation and how comfortable you are with managing it?
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like there are gaps there, and I'm sure there are gaps because there are gaps for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
Everyone.
think about finding maybe an independent, then they're independent advisors who are registered. Always make sure you talk to people too, if you're doing it on a professional basis, people who are registered through the
Yes.
TT SEC, because we don't want you getting bad advice from people who
Yes.
are not.
That's
But
very important.
yeah, very
Mhm.
important. And
Mhm.
take those steps. Take those steps. Reach out. There's so much information on the website, the central bank website. I don't know if the stock exchange has information as well in terms of literacy and getting to understand. But I think the SEC does a lot of that as well. So there's a
Mm.
lot of free information available to you as well online. So
On our
please,
website as well.
yeah,
Yes.
good
Mhm.
on everywhere. So all the websites are their
Mhm.
information, and on the bank's websites there are also lots of information, their products. But I think I always say start with the independent one first, so you get some
Mhm.
general information before you
Right.
go into a selling situation where you may not understand everything.
Mhm.
And yeah, talk
Yeah.
Great.
about it, take responsibility for it, and let's see
Mhm.
what happens with your money situation.
Right.
So
Good.
Eva,
Just want to acknowledge we're seeing here, Giselle, talking about self-esteem and building confidence. That's very important.
Of
yeah,
Thanks,
course.
Giselle.
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, I'm much more confident now than I was 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because I think, like I said, you become your own architect for your financial
Right.
wealth.
Yes.
And knowing that, you have a contingency in place, you have something to fall back on, you feel as though you're prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a feeling that is priceless.
Yes.
You could
Thank you.
sleep
absolutely.
at night and you know that, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. I will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
thanks everyone. Have a
Thanks,
wonderful
Eva.
week.
Thank
Yes.
you very
Yeah,
much. Thank you, ladies,
yeah,
for having me.
yeah.
Our
Good,
pleasure.
good.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.